Matt Lynch, and I'm a police sergeant with Oregon City Police Department, your local law enforcement agency. And I also like to start with when I'm at the college, that I'm a proud Cougar graduate. 1994. Is anyone working here? Yeah. Like 2 people. Yay! Right? And a proud member of the Clackamas track and field program. So, I love this place. I work here, I grew up here, I obviously went to school here. So it's an honor and privilege for me to come and speak with you about really anything, but this topic in particular. We're going to go through, I'm not a PowerPoint person or anything like that. My hands are moving, right? So I have a series, a sheet that kind of keeps me quasi on track, but some of this will be driven by questions. I like questions are good. And we'll just kind of take this path. The first thing I want to say is a lot of us in here are educators, right? And so the why is very important, right? When we're teaching something, it's like, hey, here's the steps to this process, but why is that process that way? And so the more I talk about these events and how we react to them, I feel that if I can impart on you why you're doing something, why you're reacting a certain way, then the process will be intuitive. Does that make sense? Right? If I understand the end goal or the end state of what I want to be, then I know these things are going to get me there, and they make sense, and they're logical, and they will work. So the why. The second part of this is, this discussion obviously is mostly in the context of you at work and you at school. However, that is not the majority of our time as humans out in the world, right? It's like 96 hours in a week, 40-ish if you're full-time or here. The rest of it is we're out, either at home or out in the world, we're with loved ones, we're with family, we're with friends. And so percentage-wise, an event like this is far more likely to occur when you're not at work, right? When you're at a restaurant, or you're shopping, or you're in a movie theater, or you're at an outdoor concert, something like that. So it's just as important that we look at this in this context of everyday life. How am I going to deal with an event like this in my everyday life? And then if I understand the why, I can put it in the context of at school, or at home, or at a restaurant, or anything like that. Does that make sense? So as we go through this, those are kind of my 2 big things. I want you to put it in a broader context, and I want you to understand why we're doing this. So some of this is going to rely on your own policy and procedure. And speaking with Dennis, it probably would be a good idea if you haven't, when this class is over, to kind of go back through whatever that is in your employee handbook or your policy guide or whatever, look at things and just kind of understand what is written in that. Does that make sense? I don't want to say anything that's contradictory to what is in there, and I might, but I apologize because I'm just going to say it. So first we're going to start with 2 basic kind of concepts. And just for clarity, we're talking about active threat scenarios. And I use the term active threat because it might not be an active shooter. An active shooter would be something that denotes the person has a firearm. But there's lots of weapons out there. There's lots of ways for people to do harm to other people. Firearms are just one. It could be somebody shows up with a samurai sword on campus. Right? Now we have an active samurai. Whatever. Right? I will try to inject a little humor because this is a serious topic. Anyway, so I use active threat because I don't want you to pigeonhole this into thinking, again, the person doesn't have a gun, so I don't have to follow this protocol. No, you absolutely have to follow this protocol because it's a threat, and they can cause serious physical harm or death. Does that make sense? So the 2 kind of ways, 2 basic premises that we start with is one is the danger outside the building, or is the danger inside the building? Right, does that make sense? So we have protocol if the danger is outside the building, right? We kind of, like a term we'll generally sometimes use, you might see as a block out, right? So the danger's outside the building, everybody stay in, lock the doors, nobody goes in or out, and business as usual, continues as usual. An example of that could be police activity, not necessarily related to the campus, but something's going on at a traffic stop at Beaver Creek and Claremont, and maybe there were shots fired. The danger is out there on Beaver Creek Road, but it's close to the campus. So, hey, lock all your doors, continue teaching your class. No one comes in or out until we give kind of the all clear. So we have that. That's a pretty simple protocol. If the danger's outside, we want to keep it outside, not let it in, but we just kind of continue with what we're doing. It was interesting. I saw some video released within the last couple of days from a FOIA request from one of the news agencies, and there was a shooting last year outside of Jefferson High School during some basketball and some after-school activities. And it didn't dawn on me right away when I was watching the video, but the shooting was outside the school, right? It was some youth, whatever they had, whatever argument, and they went together. Like, right, wrong, or indifferent. It didn't matter. But what I saw in the video was, what did everybody inside the basketball and inside the school do? Yeah, Katie saw the video. Does anyone see the video? They poured out like the building was on fire. Right? So where's the danger? Outside. Where do I not want to be? Outside. What did all those kids and parents and everybody do? Outside. They bailed out to outside, right? So it is this like maybe counterintuitive thing of like, oh, there's danger, I need to leave. Well, take a breath, look around, and realize where the danger's at, and don't inadvertently run towards the danger. Does that make sense? So I saw that video and was like, man, they need to like have a chit chat with what's going on. If the danger's outside, we need to stay in here and lock the doors and not let the danger in. So the second part is the danger's now inside this structure, right? So the danger's inside, so what do I want to do now? Now I want to get away from the danger, right? We're going to cover, there's many different models. An easy one that I like to use is kind of the run, hide, fight. Has anyone kind of heard that model? I like it for a variety of reasons, but again, after doing this for several years, I've kind of dumbed it down to this why. Why am I running? Why am I hiding? Why am I fighting? Why is it in that order? And it all boils down to time. Everything you're doing is to buy time for law enforcement to arrive and solve the problem. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So again, everything you do is to buy time for law enforcement to arrive and solve the problem. Now, solving the problem can look a bunch of different ways, and we'll get into what a police response looks like in a little bit, and kind of like how these things play out. But whether you're running or hiding or fighting, it's all in an effort to delay what that bad person has access to, victims, and buy time for us to get the information, gather enough police officers, drive to the scene, get out of our cars, orient ourselves, find the right building on campus, right? Because this isn't even that big of a campus, and I went here, and it's like, oh yeah, where's Gregory out? We have maps, we know, we'll get there fast. But for us to get enough time together to arrive and solve the problem. So, holding that in your mind of like, why am I doing this? Pat said, buy time. So everything you're doing is to delay the threat's access to victims and create as much time as possible. Everybody kind of tracking with that? Make sense? So the first one, run. Run is the first one because it is the easiest. It gives the most time, and it's kind of the most, I'll say, primal. It's like there's the danger over there, I'm going to go this way. So distance equals time. The further away from the threat I can be, the more time there is for us to arrive. The more time it takes the threat to get to me. Now running looks a bunch of different ways, right? Some of it's based on our physicality, like how good a shape we are, how fast we are, right? How physically am I able to run? Some of it has to do with where I'm at when this thing starts. Like, am I on the 3rd floor? Did I start running up? Well, eventually I'm going to get to where I can no longer run, right? So some of it depends on our location, some of it depends on our physicality, some of it also depends on, again, not necessarily the context of here in the school, but where I'm at. If I have little people with me that I care about, right? Now I'm married to their speed and what they can do. If I have someone with some kind of disability with me, like I'm attached to that person, we're only going to go as fast as I can move this person with me. So run takes on a lot of different languages, but at its heart, it is I'm moving as fast as I can, as far away from the danger as possible, and I'm gathering up the people in my immediate surroundings, and I'm taking them with me, and that's it, right? If I'm a kindergarten teacher, that looks different, right? Because now I'm in charge of all these little kids. But if I'm at a concert with 2 people that are my friends and that I care about, who am I gathering up to run with? Right, just those 2 people, and then we're moving, right? Everybody else kind of do their own thing. So run it's pretty easy. I went to lunch with a friend the other day, and she's married to a Marine, and we fly fish together a lot. So I went to lunch with her, and so we walked into the restaurant, and she immediately is like, she's like, hey, you want to sit over there, don't you? And I'm like, yes. So it was to my back, corner booth, my back to the wall where I could see everything. And her and I have fished a lot together, but I think that's probably like one of the first times we've ever been in a restaurant together. But she just knew intuitively, like, all right, I'm married to a Marine, I know Pat's a cop, he's gonna want to sit back there with his back to the wall where he can see everything. And that's just, it's not necessarily being paranoid, it's just having this situational awareness of like, yeah, I'm in Portland, I'm at this restaurant, I'm gonna enjoy myself, but I have my friend that I care about, and I wanna see what's gonna happen before me. The other note I have on the run is kind of like that, but kind of knowing 2 or 3 ways out of anywhere you are, especially if this is a work environment, right? From my classroom, from my building, I know 1 or 2 ways out. So if the danger is there, I know I have another way out there, right? If the danger's there, I have another way out there. There are several multi-story buildings here on campus, and that can raise a problem, right? If I'm in a multi-story building, how do I get out? Is there a way for me to egress out of a window down? Here, generally, probably not. So then I have to think about this, how I'm gonna do this. Why are we having this discussion? Well, because that's why we're here. But also it's like, hey, it's really good to think about this before it happens, right? So maybe when you go back to whatever building or wherever your classroom is today, you kind of look around and take stock and like, oh yeah, I could get out that way and go down there, but if that was blocked, I could get out this way and go down there. So just having a couple ways to run that are more than the obvious one. Again, like as a kid in the 80s, I remember the TV commercials of like the fire ladders. Does anybody remember those? Right? Like if you had like a 2-story house, you had like a little ladder bag upstairs, and you break the window and roll out the ladder. The commercials aren't there anymore, but that's still a thing, right? So back to in our homes or things like that, like is there a way for all the bedrooms are up on the top floor of the house? Right? If something happened on the bottom floor, how do we get out? How do I get my kids out? How do I get family members out? So just things to think about. These, we'll talk about, continue down this active threat thing, but I will cover a variety of kind of emergencies, if you will. Does that make sense? Run. Distance equals time. Hide. When do we hide? You have an idea?
When you can't run.
What's that?
When you can't run.
When you can't run. That's it exactly. That's my note. After you can no longer run. Right? So the priority is going to be what? Run. What that looks like, different things, we'll talk about it. Once I can no longer run, then I should do what? try to hide. Now, what does that look like? Looks like a variety of things, right? Depending on the room. First and foremost, once I get inside the room, along with hiding, what do I want to think about that door?
Locking it.
Locking it if I can, right? If I have a key. What else? Barricading it, someone said, barricading it. Because again, the why is what? What am I trying to do? Time. Delay this person as much as possible. So if they have tracked me to this room, delay the amount of time that it takes them to get in. Because every second or minute that I can delay them, all the law enforcement, everybody's arriving. So how do these doors work? Do they open in or out? Right? The doors that we're all, except for those two, we'll talk about that, that's a good example. So the rest of these doors out here in this room, do they open in or out of the room? Out. So if we're trying to hide inside this room, is it easier or harder for someone to get in? Easier, right? It makes it very difficult to barricade a door that opens out. Does that make sense? So, and I'll walk around, right? So these rooms, excuse me, right? These crash bars are great for fire safety, but they make it difficult to barricade a door, right? So in fires, we want what? Easy access, right? But in this kind of environment that we're talking about, we don't want easy access. So the nice thing about these self-closing hinges, right? Everybody sees how this operates? As I open, this gets wider and wider and wider. So if this is closed and there's a way for me to somehow tie something, anything to that, to restrict that from opening, it's going to cause this to be more difficult for that person to open. Does that make sense? If I don't have the ability to lock. So these little crash bars, these are very difficult to lock. Does that make sense? Now if we're on that side, right, and the door pushes into the room, it's much easier to barricade that door. What can we do to a door that we push into a room, besides lock it?
Barricade.
Yeah, we can put stuff in front of it.
Put a wedge underneath it.
A wedge underneath it. It's one of the easiest. And I can just roll up some paper, thick amount of paper, like from a book, and just wedge that under the door. The harder someone pushes on it, what does that wedge want to do? It just gets tighter and tighter and tighter. Right, so the harder they force on it, anything I've shoved under that door, it just locks itself in place. And even if they get the door open like that much, that's fine. If they can't get in, that's all I care about. So wedging doors that push in is very good. These self-closing hinges, if I can do anything, if I got a roll of duct tape in the class, great. I'm just up there winding that thing up. I'm doing anything I can to, again, delay and slow and buy time.
Now I'm gonna.
Camera guys that fall. Hiding is kind of this like pivotal moment. Because once I've made myself into an area that I'm hiding, I'm also, not only am I thinking about barricading that door, but what am I going to look around for as well, man? What's that?
Weapons.
Weapons, we'll get to that, great. Anything else?
Things you can hide behind.
Maybe a way out. Who said that? Yeah, great. Yes.
Hiding the students.
Hiding the students.
Easy shot.
Depends, and we'll get to that when we talk about classrooms. We'll kind of talk about the individuals right now. But yes, another way out. I might have went to a room that I thought, well, this is the end of the road, and I barricade the door and don't realize I've never really been in that room, and oh yes, there's a window, there's another door that I can get out. Great. So looking for another way out, looking for weapons. And let's come back to classrooms. So classrooms in that lockdown scenario, what's kind of the general thing we want kids to do, or students to do? Because some of them are maybe older than you in a college setting. But yeah, what do we want students to do?
Stay out of sight.
Stay out of sight.
Quiet.
Be quiet. We do these drills at the high school semi-annually, and what would you think would be my number one giveaway when I'm walking down the hallways? Yes, that shows that there's someone in the classroom. Not the lights, these guys did it. It's the lights on the phone. The teachers are great about turning off the lights. They're great about getting kids outside the view of the window of the door, which we'll talk about where to be in a second. But the number one giveaway as I go down is a bright cell phone light. And it's like, oh, I turn around, kind of cover my eyes. Oh yeah, there they all are. Because some kids like frantically doing whatever they do on phones, right? Texting mom, yes, doing all kinds of things. A side note, does everyone know you can text 911? Did everyone know that? Some yes, some no. Yeah. So it's a recent thing here in Clackamas County, maybe 4 years or so. So so you can text 911. So that's a great option if you're hiding. Don't send pictures. Don't send emojis. I just have to put that out there. An emoji or a photo will corrupt the message, and so when the dispatcher gets it, they won't see your actual message. So text only, just 911, your message, and send it. And so it works really well. We've had it for people that are maybe in domestic violence situations, down in the bedroom or something, hiding from the abuser. They don't want to make a phone call. They can text. Police show up and help out. So it's a really good option. So if you didn't know that, it's a great option. You can text 911, just text only, no photos, no movies. Yeah, the phone light gives it away. So real quick, if the threat's on the outside and those are the windows we have for the classroom, where do we want students to hide? That wall, right? That's kind of like geometry 101, right? If the angles of the window, if I'm over here, it's easy to see. If I'm on this wall or this wall, I can get to an angle where I can see. But if I'm flat against the wall of the door, it's very difficult based on the angles for anyone to see into the room. So lights out, door locked, no phones on, maybe somebody texting, but like under a shirt, texting 911 some information. Hey, I have 20 students, we're in room G105, please send help. Something like that. It's kind of like, that sounds like you guys are kind of all savvy on like how to deal with your classrooms. Pretty good. You said weather, like start to look for a weather. So the other thing, and this is where the hide piece is like this pivotal moment. So I've ran as far as I can. I've now got to a place where I can go no farther. So now me and my friends or my students or whatever have gone in here. We've done our best to barricade. The next thing we should do is start thinking about what? What's the last one? Fight, defending ourselves. The time to make a plan or figure out what to do is never during the event, right? Human psychology like 101, right? If you and I are in the room together with you, if there's the three of us and we barricaded the door, and now we come up with our plan of how we're gonna fight, and it's something as simple as when and if this person comes through the door, you wrap them around the bottom of their legs, I'm gonna wrap them around the waist, you grab the fire extinguisher and pound in their head. What does everybody have? A task. What are all three of us a part of? A team. Do we try harder when we're on a team than as an individual? Almost always. Because I don't want to do what? I don't want to let down my teammates. Okay, I got to grab them around the waist. Okay, I got to grab them around the ankles. That's all I have to think about. I know that my other teammates are going to do their part. Everyone knows what to do before the event happens. It's kind of pre-planned. I would even go so far as to say we could kind of rehearse it. Okay, well, I'm going to stand here in the door. You're going to stand on that side. And with the fire extinguisher, I want you behind me. So when he comes in, you're going to go low, I'm going to go high, and then you're going to hit it. Right? And then once they're down, we're all running out the door and take off. Right? So we have this plan. We're part of a team. We all have an integral task. Our versus something like, hey, when this person comes through the door, we're just going to fight. Okay. I don't know, what does that look like? I've never been in a fight before. What am I supposed to do? I don't know. And then it's like, well, maybe he's going to fight him and I'll just kind of stay back here, right? But it's not this team atmosphere. No one has a specific task. And I think based on my experience, you're much more likely to fit as a group of individuals than you are as this group, this team effort. So that hide becomes important. Again, I'm barricading. What does that look like? We kind of talked about it because I'm trying to buy time. But then also I'm using that time in that room to come up with my plan, assign tasks, maybe even rehearse it, and then look for weapons. Based on my little model, yeah, just a second. Does anyone guess what my favorite improvised weapon is? Fire extinguisher. I love the fire extinguisher. Most people have been trained on it, a lot of people, right? Even if you haven't, it has directions on it. You can treat the threat just like a fire, because fire extinguishers generally do what to a fire? Smother it because they take away what? Oxygen, a little fire triangle, right? They take away oxygen. So if fire doesn't have oxygen, it can't breathe, it dies. If a human doesn't have oxygen, what happens to it?
You can't breathe and die.
Yeah, it doesn't like it, right? So the fire extinguisher, emptying a fire extinguisher into someone's face, ooh, super effective, right? And then you have also this kind of like pump thing, right? When it's empty, to just kind of hit him over the head or hit him anyway, it doesn't matter. The ultimate goal, like we talked about, once that happens, is to then do what? Go back to what?
Run.
Right back to running. Yep. Question?
So when you're hiding, would it be better to cover the windows or to leave them open to see out, to see if somebody's coming?
If I had the time and methods, I would cover the windows. Right. I would. Good point. I would cover the windows. Yes.
Let's talk concealed weapons, because a lot of my students, when they come here, tell me, because everyone tells me everything, my students, that they concealed carry.
Yeah.
So I've got armed people in my classroom.
Yeah, what I would say is, it's a tricky situation. Off the cusp, what I would say is for them to just stay in the classroom, right? And then kind of come up with this plan. Hey, if this door is breached, you two are standing here and your job is to deal with that, the rest of us are over here. But what I don't want you to do is I don't want you to go out and seek out the danger. Right? I wouldn't want a student to go do that. That just gets ugly and we'll talk about the Clackamas Town Center shooting and some things that happened there, but that gets ugly on us as law enforcement arriving and trying to identify friend and foe. So intermixing that person that's trying to do good can cause more harm than good. Also, like, we don't know what their level of training is, their skill. We don't know what their willingness factor is. Some people carry it as a security blanket, but maybe just have no intention of ever using it. Who knows? But my default answer, if a student raised their hand and said, hey, I have a concealed carry, would you like me to go out and try to address that? I would say, no, stay here and protect all of us. Give them a task. Does that answer that?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's also the personal liability if you send them out and they get killed. Well, no, thank you.
Yeah, less of that. But it's more like their confusion for us identifying and what they bring to the table. I would rather have them contained and as a last resort inside that classroom. Yes?
Is the text 911 available in the Tri-County area here?
Yes, because our dispatch centers actually run through Washington County. So Washington, Multnomah, and Clackamas kind of all run the same. Yeah?
My other question would be, a lot of these classrooms don't have fire extinguishers, so what would you consider the next best weapon?
Metal coffee cups and metal water bottles, right? Those are very popular. There's not going to be a classroom that doesn't have a double-walled stainless steel like that. That's an empty fire extinguisher right there. So that's what I would go with. Anything that you can put in your hands that's going to like increase the damage you could do versus like an empty hand or something like that. Okay. So yes, go ahead.
Let's go back to run.
Yes.
When you didn't really say run where.
Right.
So my thought is I'm gonna run to my car and I'm out of here.
Yes. Unless your car is parked what?
Far away, of course. If it's
Not
near.
far away, but
Where are you shooting?
Oh,
yeah, exactly. So it kind of goes back to that Jefferson thing. and I didn't see outside video, but I would imagine most of those kids and parents were running away
To their car.
to their cars. Well, if the shooting is going on in the parking lot, that's the last place you want to go. Right, so yes, I didn't say where,
Yeah.
because that's dependent on where the danger is. But if the danger's over here, my car's over here, absolutely. Get to my car and get out. Grab my friends, put them in the car.
Afraid,
Off we go.
of course.
Yeah, off we go.
I'll
Good
take
question.
you with me.
Yeah. Friends who can keep up. So hi, this comes back to, this was a lesson we learned at the Clackamas Town Center shooting, was we had a bunch of these stores. Does everybody remember that most of us are old enough? There was an active shooter at Clackamas Town Center. I'll reference that because there's some interesting things that happened. And this is one that we learned, these, because a lot of them were kids, barricaded themselves in their small businesses throughout Town Center, and after the event, we're coming by like, police department, open the door. What do you think their response is? No. Or nothing. But after a couple times, it's like, yeah, exactly, right? I don't trust you. Right, so what we did was we just started sliding ID cards under the door. And it was great, right? So there's nothing wrong with that. Like, hey, put your ID under the door. Okay, ID card goes into the, oh, yeah, that looks good. Yes, no one's gonna mock up, it's just, we can go down that rabbit hole, it's not gonna happen. So we slid business cards and ID cards under doors. People picked them up and they're like, okay, cool. And they unlocked it and let us in and we evacuated people. So that was something that we had never really thought about and never talked about and trained, especially in like a school or a business environment. We have all these small rooms with people. Absolutely, I'm not opening that door. I'm right there with you. Not opening that door. Slide a business card, prove it. And then I'll open the door. So that was a good lesson that we learned from Clackamas. So fight. We kind of already talked about that, right? So my notes on fight. Fight when you can no longer run or no longer hide. Or wherever you're hiding has been breached. Right? So it's a last resort thing. And the only reason I'm going to fight is to do what?
Get more time, get out.
Get more time and get out. Right? Disable this person, knock them down, and get away. Now I will say this, fighting is interesting from like a psychological, kind of again back to our psychology. There is this run, hide, fight video. Has anyone seen some of these run, hide, fight videos? Has anyone seen the run, hide, fight video where it starts in like a grocery store where the guy comes in with a duffel bag and sits it down? Yeah. So there's this great, it's a run, hide, fight video. So this guy comes in slow motion and there's a clerk that's standing like this far from the guy. And he sets down the duffel bag and he unzips it and out and then lays this armor. And he starts like laying stuff out. And the clerk like has a broom or something, he's standing there, he's like, oh my gosh, and he takes off. What did he have the opportunity to do? Yeah, something right there before he's like, hey, it's obvious what's gonna go down. But the guy wasn't armed and he was moving in a very slow manner. It kind of, I didn't like that, the way they portrayed it, because if you had the wherewithal to just knock that person down and start screaming, other people coming to your aid, like, hey, maybe you could have like intervened in this thing right away before the person was armed, before they figured out what they were doing. It was an interesting thing in that video. So opportunity, that comes back to like opportunity. Like if I have this little brief opportunity, like maybe I'm gonna seize that little opportunity. And I can't tell you what that's gonna look like, but that video showed a clear opportunity that the person kind of just dropped their broom and ran. Right? Again, it's a video, they were doing it for a reason. I just didn't like that they put that in there, where there was a clear arm's reach distance before this person had done anything for someone to like intervene. We talked about making a plan. Why is making a plan and assigning tasks good for fighting?
Greater chance of success.
Yeah, chance for success. We're all part of the team, and we all know what we're going to do. We don't want to let down that. It's that team dynamic. I don't want to let down my team. Improvised weapons. Yep. So that's kind of my rundown on the run, hide, fight model. Now we'll talk about. I got still a bunch of more things to cover. And we'll try to move through this quick as possible. This next one is pretty important. This goes back to kind of your policy and how things are run, but it's how do we alert employees that are at other buildings, like say on campus, or show up to work late, or are on vacation or sick, right? How do I alert other members of my team, other members on campus? How does that message get out? If something happened in Gregory Hall, there's a dozen plus other buildings that if gunfire is going on inside here, guaranteed no one else on campus is even hearing it. So how does that process happen? Again, that's a kind of a policy thing, and I would hope that there's something in play for that. And then how do we let other employees know? So that's very, very important. Police response, what is this going to look like? The police response during, say, Monday through Friday, kind of daytime operations in Oregon City is going to be massive and it's going to be fast. Because you have the Oregon City Police Department, but we're also the county seat. The jail is here, the hospital's here, the courthouse is here. It is a hub of law enforcement, Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, 8 to 5. We had, several years ago, we had the junior ROTC program at Oregon City High School. It's a great program. They have their own kind of building. And so there was a young man, and he was practicing marching with a wooden rifle. There's very specific rules for obvious reasons of when and where they're allowed to march and practice like that. He kind of like, the rules are for those people, right? So he started practicing in the Oregon City High School cafeteria in between classes. Yes, I see the head shaking. Why? Well, he's a teenage boy. We can go there. Anyway, so he's out there not meaning any harm, just wanting to get some practice in. So it's in between classes, but kids are milling about, so obviously somebody sees it. And what do they report? Hey, there's a student with a gun in the cafeteria. So the big red button gets hit, Oregon City PD and everybody else starts showing up. We arrived through the front door with, I think it was like 8 people, 8 officers with rifles in like minutes. Well, in the meantime, staff had kind of figured out that, hey, this was like a non-deal, it's a wooden gun, student, so they kind of already de-escalated it, but hadn't relayed that information to us because it's the telephone game, right? So we all rush in, and they're like, what do you guys, like, this is not what we expected. And it's kind of like, well, what did you expect? And we talked to them, and they were like, well, we expected like 1 or 2 of you would show up, and we would talk about like what's going on. It's like, that's not how this game works. This is real life. If you say this is what you get. Obviously, we slowed down, we figured out what it was, there's no harm, no foul. But it stuck in my mind of how surprised and kind of shocked they were at the volume and kind of, for lack of a better word, the level of violence that we showed up with. Because we have to, because what are we fighting again? At the very beginning of this lecture, what are we fighting? Time. The more time that bad guy has, the more damage they can do. We can't give them any amount of time. So we have to show up with enough people and moving rapidly towards that position. And maybe if we have time to talk about some Uvalde stuff. But time is what we're fighting. We can't mess around. We can't send 1 or 2 people like, hey, so you guys called about this guy in the cafeteria, like, what's going on? Like, we're just wasting time, right? We're wasting time. So I bring that up for a couple reasons. One is a reassurance. Like, we will have enough officers and they will be here quickly. And then the other thing is, don't be kind of surprised at the level in which we show up, the speed in which we show up, and the numbers at which we show up, right? Because of kind of we're lucky where we are in that time, Monday through Friday period, it's going to be big. I like kind of what you said, like, hey, you didn't tell us where to run. So this kind of goes back to what I have here is types of evacuations. So this kind of goes back into this thing like, why are we evacuating? Why are we running? I have bomb threats on this. Bomb threats are on the rise. I personally have had the bomb team here at the college twice. Once in the library, if anyone remembers that incident. There was an art project that a young student was working on. Late at night, they left it in the library. Library staff arrived in the morning and found this thing, and it looked like a bomb. It had wires, and it looked like a bomb. And so much so that the bomb squad was like, when I was communicating with them, sending them photos, they're like, yeah, that looks like a device. And so they came out, they have a mobile x-ray, it's very small. We x-rayed it. And then they put out some information that was like, yeah, that's my art project. But hey, good training, everything was good training. But again, we isolated it to the library, we evacuated the library, it looked like this thing. The other one ended up being a dog toy out behind the track and field that someone on a walk with a walking path walked by. And again, same thing, it looked like a device with a fuse and everything. Again, we sent pictures, the bomb guys are like, yeah, that looks like a device. And they came out and it was a dog toy. So two different kind of incidents. Who here works in an office where they like answer phone calls from the outside? Does anyone in here work in the registrar's office or anything like that, right? So you may receive some kind of phone threat or bomb threat. So that's why we're just talking about it. Department of Homeland Security has a bomb checklist. It's a great little thing to familiarize yourself with. It's on DHS's website, but it basically talks about your procedures in answering the phone, keeping them on the phone as long as possible, and asking some specific questions. The more specific a bomb threat is, the more dangerous it is, right? If someone calls, for instance, and says, I have a bomb that's going to blow up the entire college, and I left it in a suitcase on the track. It's like, okay, well, physics, that's probably not going to work, but it's not very specific. Leaving it in a suitcase on the track leaves us an easy area to look, but saying that it's big enough to destroy the whole campus, it's probably not. Now, someone that gives a very detailed account of what they're doing, which we had one at the high school, it was very detailed. We had one at Benchmade, very detailed, what room it was in, what the device looked like, why it was there, what it was going to do. That's all information we need. The reason I bring up bomb threats and the evacuation, what we need from you all that work in the area is you're the eyes and ears, right? So if you're evacuating and then you go to a rally point and we come, officers might ask you, hey, on your way out, did you see anything weird? You're like, yeah, I saw this thing there. Cool, now I'm starting point, right? So as you're evacuating for a bomb, if you are called upon to do that, just kind of look around your area, look for things that are out of place. Look for things that are unusual that you can relay back. The other thing with bombs that we will need probably, and it'll probably be security, is someone to go with us to kind of look through the area because you will know the building, right? So that's just kind of a quick take on bombs. Natural disaster, fires, bombs, hazmat, anything like that. How are those evacuations kind of different than an active threat evacuation? If it's a fire, when we evacuate, what do we all go do? Probably we gather, right? We gather up to account for everybody, make sure we have all our students, make sure we have all our staff, make sure everyone's out of the building. Same thing if there was some kind of gas leak or a bomb threat or something like that, we gather. In the active threat scenario, what do we not want to do? Gather. So that's kind of back to like, I'm not going to tell you where to go, because I don't want you all going to the same place. It's like scatter. Every person for themselves, plus my little friends. Employee accountability. Again, this kind of comes back to like our policy manual, things like that. How do we account for people after the event? I, as an investigator and a law enforcement officer, I'm not concerned with that per se right away. If you get back to your car and make it all the way home, cool. We'll figure out where you were later. And then we'll get a detective in touch with you. Hey, what did you see? And get an interview and things like that. But having to hold people or gather people here during the event, no. Get away as far as you can. We'll do accountability later. Accountability looks much different in this than kind of every other evacuation. And that's why I bring up those other evacuations. It's kind of a set procedure for these types. This thing is its own little thing. This is a big one. We're going to spend a minute on this. knowing and predicting possible threats. So we've kind of talked about like, hey, what to do when this thing kind of kicks off, but is there a prevention factor here? Should be seeing heads go, yeah, there absolutely is. Generally speaking, broad generalities, right? If you pay attention to some of these events, what happens after the event and what does the investigation reveal? Did people know that this person was kooky and planning something? Or did they have no idea?
Most of them.
They knew. The no idea is my neighbor that always kept to himself that ends up, you know, killing his wife and no one knew it, like I never saw that coming. Right, that's the nobody knew. These, with the internet, with social media, with friend circles, peeling back the layers of the onion, it becomes plainly obvious that something was awry with this individual, and early intervention may or may not have helped, but we don't know because we didn't have an early intervention mechanism. I have a list of possible threats. At the bottom of the list for Clackamas Community College is like a domestic or international terrorist. But that's really at the bottom of the list. If ISIS wants to make a statement in the United States of America, they are more likely than not going to choose Clackamas Community College, right? They're just not. They're going to choose something what? Very high profile. Very high profile, right? What threats do we deal with here at the college that we might have to deal with? What are some of those?
Domestics.
Yeah, domestic disturbance between employees, or an employee having an abusive relationship. What else? Students, right? What else? Ex-employees, right? An employee that hasn't perceived a real grievance against the college, right? Former and disgruntled employees, employees in a domestic violence situation, employees going through a divorce and child custody. This one's a big one. We have a couple of these. The child custody, like that, I mean, imagine. I have a daughter, like that's visceral, right? Someone's taking your kids away. Students, people with a perceived grievance, and then I have last on the list, domestic or international terrorists. Outside of the domestic and international terrorists, if we're talking about current employees in a domestic violence relationship, employees with a grievance, ex-employees, students with a grievance or students with some extreme ideology, what makes those different than, say, the ISIS person? Are we going to know about the ISIS person? Do we know about the employees and the students? Yes. Somebody does. Somebody here has a confidant. Like I might come to you at lunch and like, man, my wife and I are going through hard times, we're going through a divorce, she's going to take the kids, I can't deal with this, right? And I start opening up, like saying things like, you know, if I had the opportunity, I would just kill her, right? Things like this. Now, this becomes a very tenuous thing with human resources and how we operate with privacy and trust between friends. But now what responsibility is on her? Like, what do I do with that information, right? Do I keep it to myself because Pat's my trusted friend? But then all of a sudden I see on the news 3 days later he killed his wife and his kids. And I knew that. He talked to me about that. He said that that was a possibility and I kept it to myself. How would you feel? It'd be hard, right? Now again, policy, human resources, I'm not saying how we do this. I'm more saying we need to have a discussion about this, and that if these things come to light, there needs to be a mechanism for us to safely let someone know, because we need to make this early intervention. And the early intervention can be as much as like even her to me like, hey, that's a bad idea. Are you serious about that? No, I'm not. Okay, because if you were, you know, I'd have to tell someone, yeah, I know, I'm sorry, it's hard, I was just venting. Okay, right? Or it could be like, going to someone in human resources, hey, I had another staff member say these things, or after human resources let someone go, and they make statements in the exit interview that are very concerning, and they make posts online. Maybe now it's elevated to letting the Oregon City Police Department know. Hey, we just had a former employee during the exit interview, he said these things. They were let go for these reasons. We're very concerned. Okay. We, in Clackamas County, and some of you may be familiar with it, we have the Adult Threat Assessment Team, right? They meet once a week, and we deal with things like this that aren't necessarily crimes where law enforcement can get involved, but they're adult threats that we need to monitor. Maybe we reach out with a social worker, we try to get them resources, we at least put them on the radar so we can kind of see what's going on with this person and feel it out. But this early intervention piece, I think is huge. And we kind of miss the boat on this a lot. And you'll see it in the news time and time again. When something happens, post-interview, post-investigation, yeah, there were 10 people that this person had told what they were going to do, and not a single person said anything. Again, that would be very difficult for me to live with. So that's kind of that.
Can we just also add that we do have a care team for students? So for students who are concerned about, we do have a mechanism. It's called
Perfect.
care team, and people should feel free to refer.
That's awesome. We just need to do it. I know we've taken a couple of cases at Oregon City Police Department with staff members, former staff members, and current and former students that have made threats that's been risen to our level, and we have mechanisms as well that we can intervene and we can deal with it. So that communication piece is really good. I know we're hitting almost 10 o'clock. I'm going to skip down 2 more things. Yeah. Back to the Clackamas Town Center thing. This was interesting, and I've seen this a lot. Everybody's familiar with Clackamas Town Center shoot, right? So again, think back about the time requirement. On video, the person walks into Macy's. It's kind of funny, it's like this. There's the rounders, call them rounders. Oh, retail. Right, the little rounders where everything's hung up on. So he walks in the front door, and he's wearing a vest that has ammunition on it, and he's carrying a rifle. And he like walks through this crowd of people Christmas shopping, and almost to the person, you'll see this, like they're looking at t-shirts, they stop, they lock eyes with the person, and they watch him walk out into the big opening, and they go right back to this. There's like 40 people that saw this person. He's not running, he's just walking through the center aisle all the way to the opening. When did we get the first 911 call?
After the shots were fired.
After the shots were fired. It is, but that's like 40 people that are all like you and I. They're all just people from different walks of life, people from different ages. Every one of them saw it, but no one said anything. Why?
Well, on the flip side, though, there's people that dress in all ways, shapes, and
True.
you don't know if that's real or they're going to the center of the, especially in town center, going to set up some sort of display of doing
True.
something in the center of the mall.
But I will say this.
So what would you do?
I would call.
You would just
I
call
would
it in.
call, and what's the first step in our process?
Run.
Run! Right? Like,
Don't
gather up
continue.
people we're shopping with. Hey, we're going down to Macy's, we'll come back later. There's a weird guy. This is what he's dressed like. He's walking down, like, I mean, he has that 1,000-yard stare. He's just purposely walking. If people walk into Cabela's, where they sell firearms, if anyone's done, do they walk in with an open firearm? No, it's in a case, right? Like, it's not Halloween, right? It's Christmas. There's so many things that are out of place. I think it comes down to people being so shocked at what they saw, they were kind of in disbelief. I don't want to believe what's going on. No one else is reacting. Why should I react? No one else seems to be panicked. Why should I panic? No one else is running. I'm not going to run. And then no 911 calls were made until the first rounds were shot. So what did we lose? Time. We lost time. I'm not saying it would have changed the outcome at all. We would have been there. But hey, 45 seconds or a minute. We're getting there a minute faster. We're assessing, we're getting our people, we're gathering up, like all of that matters. But I think that people were just so, they were making excuses. Oh, it could be a guy going to set this thing up. It could be this, it could be that. You're dismissing what is reality in front of you because you don't want to deal with it or see it or believe it. And that's hard for us. So we have to be kind of ready for that and believe what we're seeing. And if we're wrong, what's the harm or foul? Like there's no harm or foul if we're wrong. Like we go, like the Oregon City High School thing, we show up and it's like, hey, it's no big deal, and then we leave. The price for the other side for being wrong, it could cost someone's life. Yes, you have a question?
I was just gonna say, they were maybe thinking that doesn't happen here. That happens in like Chicago and other places.
And I think that's true too, because like, I think if you saw that in today's world, it'd be totally different. But when did that happen? It was like
2012.
2012?
Yeah, 2012.
Okay. So I think it would be totally,
I would hope so.
I would be like, oh my, because I don't think anything had really happened in this area until that happened. And I actually had that, he was a student here at Blacclusly, and I had him as a student,
Yeah.
and I would have never thought anything of it.
Yeah. It's horrible.
Yeah.
Part of it, yes, like, that's the reason we're having this discussion. But I think even just talking about it makes you more aware. Like, oh, yes, Pat was saying, I gotta believe what I'm seeing. This is what I'm seeing. If I'm wrong, no big deal. But if I'm right, oh boy, this is like big consequence. Yes?
When was the Springfield shooting? Springfield?
For the college down in Springfield?
97.
Oh, Springfield High School in Hinkle?
99.
Yeah, that was like 99. Yeah, way back. So, yeah. People will always say like, hey, it doesn't happen around here, or I've never heard about things happening around here. I will say this. The city's great. I grew up, born and raised here, went to high school here, went to college, and it is, yes, generally safe. But I will say this, there are things you don't know about, because they don't make it in the news, that police officers deal with weekly, daily, monthly, yearly, that if you did, might give you pause of like, oh, maybe that is possible in my neighborhood, but I just never heard about it. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Right? Yeah.
I just have a quick question about gathering. So
Yeah.
have people ever made bomb threats so that people would gather together outside and then try to shoot them outside when they're in group?
No. But I've had discussions with the fire department before. We've gone back and forth with that about a false fire alarm, because that's a pretty obvious thing anywhere. Some people, somebody wanting to do harm would know, if I do the fire alarm at Gaffney Lane Elementary School, I know it's going to happen. Hasn't happened yet, but it is something that we've talked about with the fire department, and that the main reason being that with modern structures, with sprinkler systems and things like that, we just don't have fire fatalities. But we put this on a pedestal of like, we need to train this, and I'm not saying we don't, but this other thing that has caused fatalities, maybe we don't train it as much, and we need to look at how we react to these things. Yeah. Yes?
So regarding the Blackman Town Center shooting, I was actually at Sweet Tomatoes eating right there.
Yeah.
And I had a window seat, and I never saw such a police presence just going. I was wondering what was going on. And maybe 30 minutes later, I finished eating, and my plan was to go to Target across the street from the mall. And I did, but on my way there, I saw people evacuating Blackman Town Center. And I just didn't put two and two together. I thought something was happening, but it would be safe at Target. So I parked in the lawn at Target, went inside Target, and actually they had us lockdown in Target, and the management there would not let any of the customers out for about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So it sounds like they did their keeping us.
Yeah, it was overall, there were a lot of lessons that we took away from it, but overall it was a really good response, and it was handled quickly. Yes, Dennis?
Before everybody leaves, I just want to clarify, if we have a situation here, our college safety staff can lock down all of our access control points, so all of the buildings can be secured as long as you don't let somebody in.
They can be done remotely. Right?
But yeah, we can hit a 4-digit code and lock down all the buildings on on this campus or on the other campuses in a heartbeat. It only takes a second.
But how does that 1 second happen when we have to call dispatcher
Right.
in Ohio and have them then get a hold of you
And it
guys?
would take us a minute.
Okay.
But once we enter the program, it's automatic. And the other is, we would use the radio program that you're all set up to notify everybody
Oh, yeah.
about the safety issue.
Yep.
I just want to make sure that was covered before.
Yes.
And I also wanted to point out that some of the other safety drills and things that we've done, you have notices on all the monitors and the hallways and computer screens, they pop up, which is also really awesome.
That's great.
I would like to say something
Yeah.
in regards to what Kelly was leading at, because I think what now kind of addresses. This dispatch is really unacceptable. We have an emergency in the bookstore. Well, what building are you in? What side of the building? What's your name? What room? I mean, you go through all these things and it's like, are you kidding me? Can I not just get somebody that's 3 doors down from me here? It's really, I've had to deal with that several times and it's, in fact, I hung up before.
I'm fairly new here, so if there's problems with the dispatch center,
Yeah.
let me know.
I would say this. I do understand the dispatch center. I've worked with it before. If this is kind of my general thing with most people, if it involves a human and there's a human present, 911 first, right? So if say the bookstore, someone's in there and they're taking books off the shelves and they're throwing things around and they're breaking things, there's a human being present, right? That is a 911 emergency. And then my second plan would be, because we're going to be able to contact campus security super fast. Where's Pete? Like I can communicate with him almost faster than he can communicate with me. So be like, hey Pete, there's something at the bookstore. I got a couple guys going. Can you meet us there? Yep. So there's other options. But I would say that if there's a human present and there's potential danger of physical injury, that's a 911 call. Yep.
No, someone else.
Just a quick comment. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Doug Cummins. I'm the Emergency Management Coordinator, retired law enforcement from McMinnville. I've been involved with higher education security since I retired. One of the things that always bothered me, whether it's in law enforcement or security, is people wait to call in. Just like Pat was saying, at Clackamas Town Center, people didn't call in. If you see something strange, call us. Let us come take a look at it. If it's something bad and we need law enforcement, we'll call law enforcement real quickly. If you're not sure, give us a call and let us come check it out. Don't wait an hour or days to call us, because then we can't figure it out.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say and to give credit to our security in the fact that you mentioned call 911 first and then you'll do something, but I accidentally, because we have to call 9 to get out on our phones.
Oh.
So I accidentally called, and it was a long distance number,
Yeah.
and I accidentally called 911. In less than 5 minutes, security was in my office. Are you okay? I was like, what? I was like, oh crap. Because I hung up really quickly.
Oh, yeah, you can't hang up fast enough. Yes, we
Yeah,
can.
you cannot hang up fast enough. They will show up.
Yep.
I mean, this was classic CCC security that showed up to come to my aid. So even if you call 911, I think something happens and it automatically goes to them. So don't stress your mind about having to do both.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great example. And we'll know exactly where it is.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a hang up like that, and they'll usually try to call back, make sure you're okay, but if they can't get through, we'll send a message to security, hey, will you go double check? We got a hang up call from this classroom. Everything's good. Yeah.
So what would be your recommendation if there is somebody in the bookstore going through the books? Are you better off texting 911 or calling 911?
Whatever you feel comfortable with.
But
Yeah.
is calling better just because you can give more?
Calling's always better, but if you're in a situation where maybe you're trying to verbally de-escalate the thing, and you just got a little quick text or something like that, whatever you feel comfortable with. Generally, the texting is someone reserved for people that, for whatever reason, where they are, they can't speak because they're trying to be quiet, they're trying to hide, things like that. Yes.
Just one thing I recommend, and I know this a long time ago, is that anytime you walk into any building with taxes,
Make it a habit.
What's that?
Anytime you walk.
Look for exits, yep.
Look for exits.
More than one.
Yep. And that goes back to the beginning of our conversation, like trying to look for two ways out. I'll leave you with one more thing. As educators, most of us are, or public safety, your staff are here. Does everyone have to do like CPR first aid?
Not everyone.
Not everyone? Most people don't. A lot of us have to do CPR. We have AEDs around in the building,
Yes.
right? What is lacking generally is any kind of first aid for traumatic bleeding, right? And so there's bleedingcontrol.org is a government website that has some very basic information on how to stop massive bleeding. So in the United States, we're really good at early intervention with CPR, early intervention with AEDs. That's great. What we're not so good at is stopping massive bleeding, which can result from car crashes, gunshot wounds, stab wounds, anything like that. Everybody's familiar with the Boston bombing at the Boston Marathon, right? So the Boston bombing goes off. A bunch of citizens rush in to help fellow citizens, which is amazing and great. They start providing what they believe is first aid. On a medical review, literally nothing any citizen did made a difference in the outcome of anyone who was injured. They were trying, they wanted to help, they did not know what to do. So kind of after that, we've gone to this bleedingcontrol.org, and you'll see it talks about how to stop traumatic bleeding, how to use bandages, tourniquets, and pressure. It's a very good website. Dallas International Airport was one of the first ones to kind of adopt it, and next to their AEDs, they have kind of little trauma bags. And so, hey, if something happens at Dallas Airport, if it's the heart attack model, we've got it. If somebody comes in and does bad things, and we have fellow citizens that are wounded and injured, right? It could take us a little bit to get there. It could take medical a little while to get there. And if you know what to do to help someone and save their life, and you're willing to do it, that's great. But we all need to know what to do. That's why we're here for this training. So I would kind of recommend that. That's kind of a missing kind of link in this whole process of how we are as citizens to deal with these things. To wrap things up, sorry I'm a little long-winded. The why, right? Everything that you do, to include stopping someone's bleeding, is to buy what? Time. I'm running to create distance and time. I'm barricading to create time. I'm fighting to get away to create more time. I'm stopping someone's bleeding to give them time before they can get to an ambulance and get to a surgeon, right? Everything we do is around that time model. And also, kind of like every time you walk into a building, look for a couple ways out. Just believe what you're seeing and understand that don't just think of this in the context of, okay, I'm at work, now I need to have my little active shooter plan. No, I'm at a movie theater, I'm at a concert, I'm at a restaurant, right? I have that just kind of in the back of my mind of like paying attention. I'm a law enforcement officer, but my willingness to get involved in anything when I look like this is almost nil. I would much rather just leave. And it wasn't that long ago, I was at a restaurant with my girlfriend, and we had just kind of started to sit down, and crazy argument, like a violent argument is starting. It's like, hey, let's just go find another restaurant around here. I don't know how that's gonna play out, right? But it is a danger, it was alerting me. I care about her, I don't care about our dinner, and hey, off we go, we'll go find another restaurant. So it's just that kind of awareness and getting out of danger before it blows up. Any other burning questions? We went through a lot. Like I said, I can talk fast. Any other burning questions? Yes.
One last comment before you leave. If you haven't used that QR code, please do it so you get credit for signing up for the class. It's pretty easy, I did it, so if I can do it, you can do it.
Thank you all for being here. And